On September 3, 2022, news broke about a group of tourists who fell while ascending the Klyuchevskoy Volcano in Kamchatka. Poor weather conditions prevented rescuers from reaching the survivors, and the climbers were trapped on the volcano during a snowstorm. Out of a group of 12 people, only 3 survived. They were in a different location. A year later, NGS recalls the tragedy and reports on the ongoing investigation. A criminal case was initiated due to the tragedy. 9 people died over 3 days. Klyuchevskoy Volcano is one of the most beautiful volcanoes in Kamchatka, attracting many climbers and tourists. In 2022, 10 people from various regions of Russia, Altai, Primorsky, Kamchatka, Moscow, and Vladimir regions, decided to fulfill their dream of climbing it. The tourists bought a tour from the Novosibirsk firm Extreme Time. The company's profile on VKontakte inspired trust, numerous reviews and romantic stories about mountain hikes in Kamchatka and other famous places. According to the tourists, the guides did not take risks and prioritized safety. The tourists arrived at the starting point by bus, and the multi-day journey began on August 30th. The climbers were expected to return by September 9th. Closer to the summit, at an altitude of 3,300 meters, there was an empty researcher's hut. After passing it, the group continued their ascent, but the weather deteriorated. Those who ascended the volcano were 38-year-old Pavel Semenichev, 34-year-old Maxim Soloviev, 26-year-old Andrei Kiprianov, 43-year-old Roman Averin, 28-year-old Ekaterina Kosyuk, 35-year-old Andrei Guter, 31-year-old Alexander Zhilovachik, 38-year-old Evgeny Sorokin, 35-year-old Anastasia Usacheva, and 46-year-old Igor Mikhailov. 2 guides, 30-year-old Ivan Alabugin and 41-year-old Andrei Mishchenko, also accompanied them. Only Anastasia Usacheva, Roman Averin, and guide Ivan Alabugin survived. At an altitude of 4,000 meters, Anastasia Usacheva and Roman Averin complained of feeling unwell, and the guides decided to split up. Ivan Alabugin descended back to the hut with the 2 tourists, while the majority of the group continued their ascent. At an altitude of 4,158 meters, the group was roped together when, under unclear circumstances, the tourists fell. 5 people died immediately, 1 lost consciousness, and guide Andrei Mishchenko broke his leg. As Ivan Alabugin later recounted to the Telegram channel Baza, when he and the 2 tourists reached the hut, Andrei Mishchenko contacted them via radio. He reported the incident. Ivan Alabugin contacted the Kamchatka Ministry of Emergency Situations, or MCHS, via satellite phone, and informed them of the tragedy. According to Kamchatka rescuers, Klyuchevskoy Volcano is one of the most dangerous routes, and the volcano is one of the most treacherous in Kamchatka. It consists of loose volcanic deposits mixed with ice and snow. Eruptions occur regularly, and the significant altitude difference poses additional risks. The ascent starts at about 800 meters, and the summit is at 4,850 meters. Thus, tourists must acclimatize several times. By the morning of September 4th, it was reported that the 6th tourist, who had lost consciousness after the fall, had died. At 4,158 meters, Andrei Mishchenko, with a broken leg, and 2 tourists, remained. Ivan Alabugin climbed back up to provide first aid. On Sunday, September 4th, MCHS rescuers attempted 3 times to land on Klyuchevskoy Volcano at an altitude of 3,300 meters, but all attempts were unsuccessful due to strong storm winds. A 4th flight was planned for the morning of September 5th. Meanwhile, a group of 24 MCHS rescuers began their ascent after being dropped off at 800 meters. They set up camp at 1,200 meters and stayed overnight. The night of September 4th to 5th was one of the most tragic. The tourists were in wet clothing, and wind gusts on the volcano reached 20 meters per second. The MCHS, via satellite communication, advised the survivors to take clothing from the deceased and put it on themselves. By the morning of September 5th, it became known that 2 more people did not survive the night, bringing the death toll to 8. By 7 a.m. Novosibirsk time, the ground rescue team had reached 1,400 meters. After 4 unsuccessful attempts to land at the required altitude, the MCHS helicopter dropped another group of rescuers at 1,663 meters. The wind and ash rising from the slopes prevented them from ascending further. The rescuers had climbing gear and began their ascent. Their goal was to reach the volcanologist's hut at 3,300 meters by midnight, requiring several hours of climbing. However, the plan did not materialize. Due to a blizzard, snow fell on Klyuchevskoy Volcano, forming huge drifts, and the rescuers had to spend the night in the mountains. On the morning of September 6th, they reached the volcanologist's hut, where two tourists had been staying all this time. They were physically fine. The rescuers were also met by guide Ivan Alabugin, who had descended from 4,158 meters. He had been trying to help the group all these days. Ivan reported that the last person, whose condition had been unknown for several hours, showed no signs of life. Soon, a Mi-8 helicopter managed to reach the volcanologist's hut and evacuate the three survivors. They were taken to the nearest populated area, the village of Klyuchi in the Kamchatka district. Ivan was hospitalized with frostbite. Over the course of 3 days in the mountains, 9 people died, some from the fall, others from injuries and the cold. On the morning of September 7th, a helicopter from the company Vityaz Aero made 2 trips to transport the bodies of the deceased to the same village. The deceased guide was from Novosibirsk, and the survivor was from Barnaul. Andrei Mishchenko broke his leg during the fall. The deceased, Andrei Mishchenko, was from Novosibirsk. The Extreme Time page shared that Kamchatka had become his second home. Before his career as a guide, he worked on the railway. Andrei first went to the mountains in 2001 when he served in the Caucasus. He worked at Extreme Time for over 5 years. Andrei had climbed Klyuchevskoy Volcano more than 13 times. Andrei Mishchenko's university classmate Roman said they studied together at the Omsk University of Railways and called him a man of the world. The deceased guide was buried in his hometown, Barabinsk. Ivan Alabugin from Barnaul was evacuated from the volcano on September 6th. The man sustained frostbite on the fingers of both hands and both feet, 1st and 2nd degree, and his left cheek, 1st degree. On September 5th, a search was conducted at the Extreme Time office. The day after the tragedy at Klyuchevskoy Volcano was reported, the Investigative Committee for Kamchatka Krai initiated a criminal case under Part 3 of Article 109 of the Russian Criminal Code, causing death by negligence. On Monday, September 5th, investigators came to the Extreme Time office in Novosibirsk. The Extreme Time Club was registered in the name of Andrei Stepanov. The tourist company, with an authorized capital of 16,000 rubles, was registered in May 2012. As of 2022, the tourist club is no longer operating. The case of the director was sent to court a year later. On September 7th, the Kirov District Court of Novosibirsk held a hearing to determine the preventive measure for director Andrei Stepanov. It was revealed in court that the tour to the volcano cost 108,500 rubles. According to investigators, the number of instructors was insufficient for the number of tourists. The court also heard that despite the poor weather conditions, the deceased guide Andrei Mishchenko decided to continue the ascent. In addition to Article 238, he was also charged under Article 109 of the Russian Criminal Code, causing death by negligence to 2 or more persons. Investigators in Kamchatka Krai reported that the documentation of LLC Extreme Time did not include contracts for services provided to the participants of the tourist group. Furthermore, the guides were not authorized to perform the duties of instructors on a tourist route of such a high level of difficulty. Andrei Stepanov's lawyer requested house arrest for his client, but the court decided to send the Novosibirsk resident to a pre-trial detention center, SIZO, and the man was transferred to Kamchatka. Ivan Alabugin was arrested after receiving medical treatment in November 2022. He is also suspected of providing services that did not meet safety requirements. In December 2022, both defendants were transferred from SIZO to house arrest. The investigation against the deceased guide was terminated. In June of this year, it was reported that the director of the tour company had admitted guilt and expressed remorse for the crime. In August, the case was sent to the court of Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky. The investigation against Ivan Alabugin is ongoing.